It's been 50 long years, but humanity is finally going back to the moon. Today, we are going to break down the absolutely epic launch of Artemis 2, from the mind-blowing power of the liftoff to some of the unexpected glitches that started testing the crew right from the get-go.
You have to let that sink in for a second. For the first time in over half a century, a crew is heading back to the lunar neighborhood. I mean, the Apollo era wrapped up way back in 1972. Since then, not a single human has gone beyond low Earth orbit. This mission right here, this is the one that changes everything.
And this is the crew that's making history. We've got NASA's Reed Wiseman, Victor Glover, and Christina Koch. And they're joined by Canada's Jeremy Hansen. Their job is, well, monumental. They have to pilot the Orion spacecraft farther from our planet than anyone has ever gone before, basically putting all the systems that'll take us back to the lunar surface through the ultimate test drive.
Okay, but let's be real. This is a test flight. They're not actually landing, at least not yet. So you might be wondering, what's the big deal about a mission that just kind of loops around the moon? Well, the answer is in the incredible, nail-biting journey just to get there. Let's start with launch day.
You know, everything, all the years of work, billions of dollars, it all comes down to launch day. It is this incredible symphony of precision, raw power, and some seriously high-stakes engineering. So let's zoom in on those final, heart-pounding moments before liftoff.
What's just fascinating here is how much of this is automated. In those last 10 minutes, this incredibly powerful computer system, the ground launch sequencer, it just takes over. It handles everything from pressurizing the fuel tanks to switching Orion over to its own internal power. And then, at T-minus 30 seconds, it gives the final go, and from that point on, nobody's touching a thing. The rocket is flying itself. And then, liftoff. The Space Launch System rocket, the SLS, unleashes a staggering 8.8 million pounds of thrust. To put that in perspective, this is the most powerful rocket ever built. It has to be to get the Orion capsule and its crew started on this incredible journey. So the first 8 minutes of flight are just this violent but perfectly choreographed dance. First, you have the two massive solid rocket boosters, which provide like 75% of the liftoff thrust. They just peel away. Then the launch abort system gets jettisoned. And finally, that enormous core stage cuts its engines and falls back to Earth, leaving Orion to finally, quietly coast into orbit. So as Orion settled into orbit, it wasn't just mission control holding its breath. Oh no. The entire world was watching, and the reactions online, they just perfectly captured that sense of awe and unity that really only space exploration can bring out in us. This one comment from a user on Reddit, it just sums it all up. Bro, I don't even want to go to work after this. Realizing how small we are in this universe just hits differently after this launch. And isn't that the truth? It really speaks to that profound perspective-shifting moment for so many of us. And this comment captures the view that had everybody glued to their screens. Watching the live feed from Orion, another user wrote, "Wow, the emotions. I'm so proud of humankind." It's just a powerful reminder that these missions are about so much more than technology. They're really about us. But as we all know, space is never, ever easy. The moment they got into orbit, the mission immediately faced its first real challenges, testing both the astronauts and the teams back on the ground in real time. The first major thing on the to-do list was the perigee raise maneuver. Now, in simple terms, this is just a quick engine burn to raise the lowest point of Orion's orbit. It basically stretches out its path around Earth, setting it up perfectly for all the next steps of the mission. But right after that burn was successful, mission control went silent. For a few very tense minutes, they lost all communication with the spacecraft. Now, contact was restored pretty quickly, but it was a stark reminder that out there in the vacuum of space, you are always one tiny glitch away from disaster. So here's the funny thing. While mission control was wrestling with these incredibly complex technical problems, the internet had its own priority. This slide just nails the split focus. On one side, you have NASA troubleshooting the flight termination system and hatch mechanisms. On the other side, the internet is basically shouting, "Did they fix the toilet?" Yep, this very real, very human concern about the waste management system became a running joke for the early part of the mission. Okay, so with communications back online, the crew moved on to one of the most critical tests of the entire mission, proximity operations, or ProxOps.
This is where the astronauts actually take manual control of Orion and fly it near the spent upper stage of the rocket. And this is not just for show. This is absolutely essential practice for these super delicate docking maneuvers they're going to need for future missions. And let me tell you, watching it live was a total nail-biter. As one user put it, watching proxops with ICPs has me biting my nails. OMG. This was Victor Glover at the controls, proving that this multi-billion-dollar spacecraft could be flown with the precision of a fighter jet. Just incredible stuff. So, with these crucial initial tests out of the way, the crew could finally settle in for the main event, a 10-day journey that would take them far beyond where any human has ever gone before. This map right here shows the incredible flight plan. After a day of just checking out all the systems, they'll perform what's called the trans-lunar injection, which is basically a huge engine burn that acts like a slingshot, flinging them out of Earth orbit and on a path straight to the moon. The whole trip is going to cover nearly 700,000 miles, looping around the far side of the moon before heading home. We can actually break this whole complex trip down into 4 key phases. First, you've got the high Earth orbit checkout, where they just test everything one last time. Second is the lunar flyby. That's the highlight of the mission. Third is the trans-Earth return, which is a 4-day coast back home. And finally, a fiery, high-speed re-entry and splashdown in the Pacific Ocean. Now, all of this brings us to a question that I saw everywhere online, and you know what? It's a really good one. If we landed on the moon over 50 years ago with less computing power than you have in your pocket calculator, why not just do it again? Why just a flyby? Well, there are a few really critical reasons. First, the SLS rocket and the Orion capsule, they're brand new. They have to be tested in flight with a crew. Second, safety standards today are just worlds away from what they were in the Apollo era. And maybe the biggest reason of all, the landers that will actually take astronauts to the surface, well, they're not ready yet. Because this time, the goal isn't just to visit, it's to build the infrastructure to stay. So this successful test flight really tees up the big question: what comes next? Artemis 2 is that critical bridge to the future. Every single system they test, every maneuver they practice, it's all data that feeds directly into Artemis 3. And that's the mission that will finally see astronauts, including the first woman, walk on the lunar surface once again. Look, this mission proves we can get back to the moon. But the real challenge isn't just visiting anymore. So as we celebrate this incredible first step, the bigger question really looms over everything. What will it take for humanity to stay?